Are there more than two genders?
Yeah.
Great. Gender is fluid?
Yeah.
You mentioned a second ago that you have trans friends.
Yep.
Do you, in terms of the gender argument, do you notice that there are more than two genders?
I mean, I'd agree that gender's probably not binary.
You can be male or female or non-binary, somewhere in between. I think that's your expression is up to you.
Lots of different genders.
Yeah, I would say so. Or, whatever. I don't think it even really has to be defined either, just what you want to be.
If 150 people who were transitioned and were trans from male to female were in prison last year, and 50% of them were ex-sexual predators, what would your opinion be about integration with regards to trans, I'm trying to get my vocab right here, trans males, i.e. new females? What would you feel about them being in women's areas? And you can link that to bathrooms as well, toilets. That's the other talking point. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not in prison, so it's different. Like, if it was in a bathroom here at uni, I'd be like, whatever, it's fine, I don't care. But it's because it's got that label of, they're a sexual predator, and it probably isn't great, but I feel like, personally, I don't have the right to say this because I am a cis female. I haven't had to deal with any of those troubles.
What does cis mean? I should know that.
You were born a female, and like that's the gender you were assigned at birth, and you've stayed with that gender. I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Right. So XX versus XY. As in,
Yeah.
you are what you are.
Yeah. So I was born a female. I'm a female now.
Yeah.
So I'm
identify as a female.
Yeah, I'm a cis female, whereas I'm not like a trans female.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's what it is.
The prison one's a complicated one, isn't it? Do you think there should be trans prisons?
Well, doing psychology, we learn about prisons, and there's not enough space, to be fair, to have a trans prison. But yeah, like I was saying, like I don't feel like I have the right to say, no, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing this, because I've not had to live with the feeling inside my head like, oh my God, I am not a girl. I don't feel like a girl at all, but I have to wear skirts, I have to do that kind of
thing. And for prisons, the way I think of it is that if a trans woman, if a trans woman was in a male prison, they'd get like beaten up and just destroyed way more than if a trans woman was in a female prison. They're way more in danger in a male prison than they are in a female prison, and there's no, I mean, at least from the data that I've seen, there's no link tying that trans women are anyway more dangerous than other women.
So when you say trans women, do you mean people?
Trans women is someone who is assigned male at birth and then transitions to become a woman.
So in terms of solutions, and in terms of the idea that as long as live and let live, and as long as we're helping people and they're safer and the progressive model of living how you want to live, there's no negative consequences. In terms of, if I was to say that last year there was 120 trans, I'm trying to get my vocab right here, trans women. Yeah. So men, biological,
who
transitioned to become a woman, 50% of them were sex offenders. What would you say to that?
I probably wouldn't believe you. But maybe that's also the way I think. That's probably also, I don't know, the way I've been educated and stuff. Sure. I'd like to see that data. I'd like to see that study. I don't know if I can believe you, but
sure.
That's a shocking number if it is true.
But even hypothetically, regardless of whether it's true or not, I'm not going to ruin it by saying whether it is or not, because independent thought. But hypothetically, would that change your, because you've been compelling, would that change your line of argument on anything that you've mentioned? If that data were true.
If that data were completely true, I think that would change. I'd have to rethink some of my ideas.
Biological predators who are now women in women's safe spaces, women areas.
I mean, yeah, that probably would change my ideas slightly.
If I decide to transition into a female, if I'm a biological man, if you'll allow me that, and I transition into a female, what's your opinion? If you sound quite pro the idea that this should happen and we should be accepting of it, which prison do I go into? If I commit a crime and I'm sentenced, sorry.
What do you mean? So if
I'm a biological male and I transition into a female,
and you commit a crime.
I commit a crime, and I'm a female, fully fledged. What prison do I go into, male or female?
Well, I would say obviously you have the argument. This is similar to the bathroom argument as well.
Use them both as the same, if you will.
Yeah, if someone, if a man transitions to a woman, I would personally say that you should be able to use the women's bathroom, because that is who you are identifying as. And I think that when you use these arguments, it's almost a bit of a kind of a bit of a straw man in a way, because you're assuming that that person is inherently bad and wants to do something bad. And obviously I think that paints quite a negative image of
with the bathroom analogy. Yeah,
and with the prison one as well, because if you're saying, you know, oh, I wouldn't want someone with male sex organs, if you will, in the same place as people with female sex organs, like, you know, you're presuming, like, something like that they're going to do something bad. I don't think that's a very good argument, in my opinion. I think that people should just, you know, if you identify as a woman, you should be able to use the women's bathroom. And yeah, I would say
that's hugely useful. So if I was to say, and I'm not going to say whether it's true or not, because lots of different data sources, and we are in media saturated information overload territory in the 21st century. What if I was to tell you that last year 130 people who were fully transitioned, we were talking men to women, in prisons, 50% of them were sex offenders? What would you, even if it was hypothetical, I'm not saying that's true, it might be, but even if it was hypothetical, would you change your mind on anything you've said?
Well, if it's hypothetical and we don't know if it's true, then
let's suspend disbelief and say it's true.
But then I don't know. I mean, you could say that with anyone. I mean, you have males that are sex offenders in prison with other men. You know, like, I don't see how, in my opinion, that's different.
What do you think about in the situation with Leah Thomas in transitioning to become female and becoming number one in the it's a really big swim meet in the US for that particular event and winning first? What are your thoughts to feminists and females over the last 100 years, and your own thoughts about whether that's right or wrong, or even just your opinion on it?
I feel like they have to be fully transitioned. It can't be like a half thing, which I know is controversial, but this thing with the swimming, I'm fine with trans. Live your life, do what you want to do. It's not affecting me, that's fine. But with the stuff with the swimming, it's like,
this is Leah Thomas, yeah?
Yeah, it's, you know, there's other female swimmers, because females are just not built different from men. We just are. We're not as, like, strong, we're skinnier, and because she's only just started her, like, estrogen, so she's still got a men's body. So
okay, so you're saying there's lines within the transitioning process, and until the law should reflect that which is medically relevant to whether you are that or the other.
Kind of, yeah, because, like, if I was trained, you know, because they get up at like 5 a.m. to train, and I was working really hard to swim in competitions, and then I got in a competition and I was against somebody and they were beating me to the point where they were on their second lap and I'm only just getting to my first lap, then I'd be, like, pissed off. And you
shouldn't even have to defend the fact that biologically men are stronger.
Yeah.
Men are stronger physically.
They are stronger. If I was to have a fight with somebody that was the same height as me, same weight as me, they would win because they are just stronger.
In my opinion, I don't want to speak on a topic that I don't know that much about. I'm not trans myself, but I do think that there are different biological advantages that exist within the same sexes as well. So, for example, Michael Phelps, he produces lactic acid at half the rate of his competitors. That gives him a biological advantage, even though he's the same, you know, sex as his competitors. And I think Leah Thomas, there have been trans athletes in the past who have transitioned from male to female, and it's all about your testosterone levels. If your testosterone levels are below the regulated amount, which I think I've heard hers were, then it's, in my opinion, I think it's fair. I think trans athletes should be able to compete, and I think that what was I going to say? Yeah, there have been female athletes that have transitioned from male to female in the past and they've not won. And in my opinion, it seems like a lot of the drama that's coming from this situation is because of the fact that she's won. And I would say if
some of the other stuff goes under radar, but this is highlighted because she's won.
Yeah, and maybe because if she had come third or second, then no one would be saying anything, in my opinion. But obviously it does raise questions, but, you know, I don't want to speak on stuff.
What do you think about that?
So I think if the transition, if for example someone that's transitioning with puberty blockers, right? They have puberty blockers from a young age. They don't even undergo puberty. They transition at the age of like 18, 19. The only difference between a quote unquote biological male and someone who's born biologically female is bone structure, right? So that to me doesn't present large enough of an advantage to disqualify someone from sports. If someone has transitioned later, they went through puberty, then I agree that an argument can be made there. And I think it's an interesting topic. It's something where we should monitor, for example, testosterone levels, stuff like that. But I don't think banning trans women from competing overall is such a good idea.
So this is really interesting. So when we talk about bone density and what makes a man and what makes a woman, that's obviously been posed to the Labour Party lately, and no one wants to answer the question, which I think is a massive talking point. But let's just say you're right, and let's say that if we catch them early enough, anyone can transition, because all it is bone density. Or surely under 18, any kind of propaganda, any kind of marketing, any kind of push, any kind of persuasion at the softer end of indoctrination, surely under 18 is abuse.
So I don't like that. That's quite heavy language, indoctrination, obviously. And also, if like transitioning has been happening for maybe 10, 15 years quite consistently now, if it truly was this much of an issue, then all the top female competitors would be trans. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing small cases, we're seeing like average-ish levels. We're not seeing the top 3 Olympic medals go to trans women every single, we're seeing it like scarcely. So I don't think it's as much of an issue as people think it is.
The average age of transitioning tends to be under 20 years old. And obviously on the NHS and with regards to medical procedures and puberty blockers, I'm sure you sound quite informed. So this is available to children. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you seem quite progressive towards the idea that live and let live. But where do we draw the line with that? That's just one example with regards to the average age of transitioning, or not even the average age, but the percentage of people doing it under 18 years old.
Obviously, I understand it's a very tricky situation. I've always felt very comfortable in my own body. But I think there are a lot of people who, when they know that they're in the wrong body, they know. That's obviously something that I don't think any of us can really talk about. We're all cis as far as I'm aware.
But what does cis mean?
You are the gender that you, or the sex even that you were born as, or you identify as the sex you were born as. But I would, in my opinion, I don't know. I think if you feel that is the right thing for you, then, when you hit puberty, that's obviously after puberty, transition becomes a lot harder. So if you would like to make that easier for yourself by doing it before that age or at that age, then I can understand that. But obviously, I also understand the argument of, you're very young, you might not understand.
Do you know what percentage of the UK is trans or is transitioning, or is it just a percentage of that demographic? Do you know what percentage is?
No.
Less than 0.5%. Now, someone said to me earlier, they said, well, there's 66 million people. So it's the same with with anything with regards to minorities. You can say, well, it's that percentage, but that means that it's 200,000 people.
Yeah.
So that's a really big number. But I think that's an interesting talking point. What are your thoughts on that, to find out that it's less than 0.5%? Does it change anything?
Not really, because I knew they were the minority. I know they're not you don't see it all the time, but it's the minority groups find it very hard to be themselves, and I've never really had to experience that.
Sure.
So it must be very hard for them, and I the people that go out and they stand up for their own rights, and I totally respect that, because I'm not brave enough to do it, and I think, you know what, if you are, go do it, live your life.
I don't know, whilst some people do change their mind and detransition, I would say I think it's quite a small amount. I'm not exactly sure myself, but I would say that it's a very few people.
In terms of the detrans movement?
Yes.
The stats on the detrans movement are difficult to talk about because they're growing, but we don't have a live data, so it is difficult to talk about. But what about suicide rates? Often people who are part of the progressive ideology say actually the suicide rates that are so high with people that transition are because of public pressure and horror in that respect, not because they're suicidal. Do you have a thought on that?
What do you mean by public pressure?
So for example, if I was to tell you that the suicide rate of those who have transitions is 40%, what would you have said the root cause of that was? If I word it like that.
Honestly, I'm not sure, but I do think that obviously when you transition, you have a lot of issues with identity, and it can be something that's very hard to talk about. And I think although there is, the way that you talk about it, there's an agenda to push, trans people in society. I really don't see that often. I think there is still a huge backlash towards trans people that you see around today. And I think, universities like this, in my opinion, I think they're very open. They provide a safe space. And I think, I don't know, I would say, yeah.
That's a big number, 40. I mean, we should be addressing that. That's a big number of suicide's an awful thing.